Hey, I wanted to make a quick video about my gun that I've been shooting, the P320 X5 Legion by SIG. I've been shooting this gun for almost 2 years now in competition, pretty much exclusively. And I'm a tinkerer. I've done a lot of stuff to it, and I've taken out some things that I've done before, that I had in there before, and I get a lot of questions because people know that I'm a tinkerer. They know that I've been shooting the same gun for a while. And there are so many things that you can do, right? So I just wanted to talk about what have I done? How would I do it again? If I got a brand new one right out of the box, what would I do? In what order? What's worth it? What's maybe not worth it? There's some stuff I think is maybe not worth it. So the first thing I would do if I got this gun again is the trigger. So this one has the Grayguns flat adjustable trigger. I am sponsored by Grayguns, and I did the trigger before I had anything to do with Grayguns. I bought it on my own, had tried a couple of other triggers out in other people's guns, and this one felt really, really good. Feedback from the people that I knew that had it, and from reviews online and stuff, said that it was really good, easy to do, no issues or anything. So I bought one and put it in, and they were right. It's really good. I run the flat trigger right now, although I'm interested in trying the hybrid trigger, which is their newer version of a curved trigger that doesn't have such a deep curve to it. The older version of the curved trigger, for me, I've felt it before, just breaks too far back to the rear. The new one is a gentler curve, doesn't break as far back to the rear. I'd say if you have large hands, like I wear a men's large glove, if you have hands that big or bigger, you'll probably like the flat trigger where it breaks. If you have smaller hands, you probably would like a curved trigger better. And for me, I could go either way, and I want to try the hybrid trigger out. So we'll see. As far as the spring setup in the gun, I guess just all the springs. I like the stock recoil spring. I've tried a few. I've tried as low as 10 pounds and up to 14 or 15. The guns come with the orange painted is a 12-pound spring, and the purple painted one is a 14-pound spring. I like the 12, and I've tried a bunch of different springs. That's the one that just seems to run really well. Doesn't feel harsh, doesn't dip the muzzle down, runs great. That's the way that I would go. For the trigger setup, you get options when you get the Grayguns trigger. They have with the parts, you put in a new sear spring or two new sear springs, and you can choose either the competition, which is the lightest one, or the intermediate, or you could leave the stock one. I went straight to the competition ones for the sear spring. I've had no reason to not do that. They've been great. They've got, I don't know how many rounds through them and haven't had any issues. So I'm staying there. I've played with different trigger return springs. I've used the competition, which is the lightest one, the intermediate, which is intermediate, and then the stock one, which is the heaviest one. I don't like the competition one. For me personally, you lose too much of the reset, which the resets on P320s in general are always just a little long and a little lazy. It's kind of the only bad thing about the gun, really. Not bad, but it's the only thing about the gun to me that's like, I pick up someone else's gun and go, yeah, it's got a quicker, snappier reset than mine, but that's not indicative really of the Grayguns trigger. It's kind of just the way P320s are, which is why I like the intermediate. So the stock SIG one is honestly also good. You could kind of almost go either way. But with the Grayguns intermediate, I find that the reset is still reasonably positive. I can just relax my finger and it clicks right back out like it should. With the competition, I feel like I have to almost move my finger forward. And that's just me and the way that I feel it. Other people like them, but on the trigger scale, the difference is only ounces, maybe 2, 3, 4 ounces at the most in pull weight. And this is still about a 2.5, if not most of the time comes in a little under 2.5 pound trigger. So for me, that's plenty light enough. That's the first thing I do to the gun. Next thing I do to the gun is make sure that the controls are easily accessible to you. I have tried, I've tried both by Springer Precision, although Grayguns actually makes one now too, I just haven't tried it yet. But I've tried the paddle mag release, which is this one, extended paddle, there you go. And also just the regular extended one that's like the standard shape or whatever. I like the paddle one better, although I'm just going back to using it. Because I can reach the paddle with a full firing grip on the gun exactly how I would hold it. I can still just hit it With the extended, I have to shift the gun in my hand just a little bit. I made the concession of going back to that because the extended one is better about one thing, which is loaded gun starts, like table start, loaded gun table start. The paddle is just a bigger, wider spot for the gun to kind of balance on, and you do have to be careful when you pick it up, or you can dislodge the mag. That said, those don't happen all that often, and especially shooting production. I reload the gun, 1, 2, 3, hopefully not 4 times per stage. So it's worth it for me to have it be the most ergonomic it can be for reloads and just work around it and be a little bit careful on loaded gun pickups. Most of the time when I pick up the gun, unless it's a classifier and I'm standing there and I'm just gonna pick up the gun and have to shoot right away, if I have to take a step or even like take a step to get to the gun or whatever, I'll just pick up the gun and hit the bottom of the magazine really fast as I'm presenting it out. So I don't have to think about, oh, pick up the gun gentle. Be careful picking up the gun. I just grab the gun like I'd grab it and then just hit it and go like that. And then I don't have to worry about it. If it did dislodge it a little tiny bit, you just hit it back in there. So that's really the only concession with running the paddle mag release. The other thing that I swap out is the slide release. I use the stock sized one, which is not the one that comes typically on the Legion. The Legion comes with a slightly larger one. When I switched over to this gun, I came over from 1911s and 2011s, and I was very regularly riding the slide stop with my right thumb, and the gun wouldn't lock back because of it. Now my grip has shifted a little bit, just more used to the gun, and I don't actually do that even with the larger one. At least not when I've shot other people's guns. It doesn't seem to be a problem, but I like the standard one. It's a super cheap part. It's like somewhere between $5 and $10. I want to say maybe $8 from SIG's site, and just slaps right in there. It's still easy for me to reach. Same thing, big, full firing grip, not a problem to reach it, but I have to like reach for it instead of it being, so easy to hit and therefore so easy to ride. So that for me is an ergonomic improvement, and I prefer it. The texture, I have the Grayguns laser texture on there, and I do really like that. It definitely makes this side probably twice as aggressive, I would say, as the stock texture. They add the texture into these smooth areas. Doesn't matter down here, but back here, that smooth area gets texture. I don't know if you can hear it or not. That's really nice. I do kind of wish they would do something to the back strap and the front strap. They don't. I could do it myself. I haven't found the need to do it. I mostly like that they add the texture where my fingers wrap around right here. I can feel it right there, and the extra texture on the side of the gun. I like that a lot. Although if you like really aggressive texture, this isn't super aggressive. It goes from like stock is like, 3 or 4 out of 10 to like 5 or 6 out of 10. And then if you want with the laser, and if you want tons of texture, just go silicone carbide. I don't like that. It's too much for me. And then the other things that I've played around with, and where the bulk of the conversation goes, I guess, is to weight. I've played around with weight on this gun a lot. I have done tungsten guide rod, tungsten grip weight, the Springer one and the Shooting Sports Innovations one. And I've also played around with brass base pads for magazines, which are actually pretty cool. They're cool because when you put 10 rounds in a mag for production, it basically makes it the weight of a full magazine. You can think of it as static weight to the gun, yes. It essentially just makes it, like I said, feel like a full magazine. The only thing I don't like about them is that it makes it really tight fit in the USPSA production box, to the point that most of the time when I put it in the box, they have to push my rear sight down to get it to go in there. It's because it's big on the bottom, But for me, I just don't like how they handle quite as well. I've used them on and off. I've gone both ways, subject to change. I have a bunch of them. Maybe I'll slap them back on there. But I like using these dry fire mags. I know a lot of people, they were hot for a minute and then people hated on them. I like them. I like that they're totally different. I like that I can rack the gun and everything. I like them. And they feel identical to the small regular Legion aluminum base pads. And they're just a little bit handier. They're just a little easier to grab out of the pouch. And if you get a bad grab on it, they just still somehow find their way up into the mag well. But as far as weight on the gun, I have played with as much as making this gun. So the way it weighs right now with a stock magazine is like 41 ounces. I've had it all the way up to 52, which was a flashlight and tungsten. I mean, it's really appealing in one sense, whereas that you've got this already soft shooting gun, and then when you add all that weight to it, 11 extra ounces, once it's on target and you pull in the trigger, it's like, boy, it doesn't move very much, does it? And it's true, it's nice. Administratively, they're kind of a pain in the ass. They just draw a little sluggish. The holsters are kind of big and cumbersome. It makes them load a little annoying because you got the big light there. Sometimes you whack the thing with your finger. But the big thing that I've found is that for me, it made the gun transition a little bit slower, which I actually could measure on the clock and did measure on the clock, but more than that, not quite as precisely. The lighter the gun gets, for me, the easier it is to just look to a spot and put the gun there, and look to a spot and put the gun there. With all the extra weight that you start adding to the gun, to me, it's look to a spot and the gun goes pretty close, and then you kind of move it to where it needs to be, and then you pull the trigger, you know? And I found that extra when it was talking about the flashlight, because it's not just overall more weight to the gun, but it's weight on the muzzle. So I have waffled back and forth a little bit and decided like it's just not worth it. I mean, yeah, it's nice that it feels soft and everything, and it's cool. It's fun to piss people off sometimes. They hate the flashlight. I hate it too. I don't think it should be allowed, but it is allowed. And it's funny to have stuff on your gun that makes people upset. So that said, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's worth it. Got to buy another holster for it. It's another thing to break and blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't do it. As far as the tungsten stuff in the gun, mine, as it sits right now, I have taken that stuff out. I'm not selling it or anything because it's interesting and it does make the gun feel a little different, but it's mostly a feel thing, is kind of what I've found. I can't really see any difference from behind the gun shooting it, and I can't really see any difference in video watching, actual muzzle flip of the gun in recoil. What it does feel as though it just kind of deadens the recoil a little bit, and there's not that much recoil to begin with because it's a 41 ounce polymer framed 9mm, right? It already recoils pretty soft, and that stuff's fairly expensive, like $125 for the guide rod and $250 for the slug. So it's almost $400 for all that stuff to add 4 ounces basically on top of, which is 10% of the weight of the gun in the frame, right? On top of, the price of the gun already. It's not bad. What I find, like I said, is that it's really more of a feel thing than actually seeing it from behind the gun. And you do feel it a little bit on a negative sense in transition. Again, I think there's a reason that this weight of gun is what they put out. This weight of gun is kind of like mid-weight to me. It's really not a super heavyweight gun. Shadow 2 is 46. The steel frame Beretta is like 48. Lots of limited guns, open guns are in the low to mid 50s. Plastic guns start in the high-ish 20s up to, aluminum frame Berettas are like 35. So really anything in the like high 30s, low 40s is kind of like a mid-weight gun to me. And that's what this is, just kind of set up. And you kind of best of both worlds. It still feels pretty handy swinging around, but deadens the recoil a little bit. So would I do it again? Add that tungsten stuff? Probably not. I already bought it. I have it. Maybe I'll change my mind and put that stuff back in. But as of right now, what I find is, honestly, it feels like shooting ammo that's like 4 or 5 power factor hotter when I take it out, which is to say not that much. Like, you can feel it, but barely. A little tiny bit of difference. But you can feel that weight not being there as a positive thing during draws and transitions. And it's also, if I were to do it again, I'd probably save the $400 and not do it. So that's where it sits for right now. I really love these guns. I've had great luck with mine. I haven't had any parts breakages or anything like that. I don't have any issues with light strikes or anything, although I don't run rifle primers. I haven't ever had to. I love these guns. I think they're really accurate. They're really reliable. They handle really nicely. They feel really good in your hand. I would totally get another one. I would get one and continue to shoot it if I had nothing to do with any companies that have anything to do with this gun. I'm pretty sold on them. I just like them a lot. And yeah, I think that's the stuff I'd do, and that's the order I'd do it. I'd do trigger first. I would do the intermediate or maybe even the stock SIG, depending on your preferences, for the trigger return spring. I'd get the shape of trigger that fits your hand. If you have bigger hands, flat, smaller hands, curved probably. In between, you could go either way. Make sure the controls are easy for you to get to, but not in the way, which these ones set up like this are that for me. The texture I really do like a lot. And as far as the weight of the gun is concerned, probably I would just leave it stock. I wouldn't play around with flashlights. I just found it to be detrimental. It's just not worth it. Nothing wrong with doing the tungsten stuff. And like I said, I am fickle and I may change my mind, but as it sits right now, really the gun handles a little easier without it as far as draws, a little bit on draw, not really so much, mostly on transitions. It just seems to kind of show up to the spot better. And I never get any kind of muzzle dip on return, which sometimes with the tungsten guide rod, when it starts to get, it's just starting to get heavy in the muzzle. You know, it's not a light gun and a lot of it's in the muzzle. Gets to the point where maybe it flips a little less, but it might actually kind of dip a little bit on return. That goes away when you take the, for me, goes away when you take the tungsten out of it. Now it's like, well, it flips a little more, but kind of feel it more than I see it, and it never really dips. And it's just when you get into that realm of it being pros and cons, and one of the pros is not costing $400 for tungsten here and tungsten here, it's like, I'll probably just leave it out. So those are my opinions. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, they're great guns, and I'll talk to you later.